This week on Outdoor Oklahoma, a person's first deer hunt is something they'll always remember, and often the foundation for a lifetime of enjoyment and fulfillment in the outdoors. Sportsmen from across the state share their stories of a time they'll always remember. Right now on Outdoor Oklahoma. Well, hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead, and today I'm joined by our Education Supervisor, Colin Berg. Thanks for joining me, Colin.
Thanks for having me, Todd. I always enjoy it.
You know, Colin, today we're going to pull off the shelf and dust off an old show that we first aired about 15 years ago. It was part of a campaign we had at the Wildlife Department called I'll Always Remember. And the purpose of that campaign was really to kind of remind folks that maybe have hunted in the past and dropped out, that hunting is still just as great as it ever was, and hopefully encourage them to go back out. Why is that such an important thing for us here at the Wildlife Department?
Well, what's important to always remember is that wildlife management is managed specifically by a user-paid, user-benefit type model, which is when you buy a hunting license, you support wildlife conservation and management. When you buy a firearm and things of that sort, there's a tax on that supports wildlife conservation and management. The issue that we're facing as state wildlife agencies across the country is that there's declining hunter numbers. And so the model can't work if you don't have hunters out there that are hunting and participating. So it's extremely important that we take time either to reactivate ourselves, or if we're an older person, or if we're new, a young or 30-year-old that never got introduced, that we take an opportunity to activate them and get them involved with purchasing licenses that are going to be used for wildlife management and conservation in the future.
Well, that's great. You know, this show, like I mentioned, is 15 years old, and you'll definitely tell that I've aged some, but the message of I'll always remember is ageless and timeless.
Deer hunting is American as it gets. It's deeply rooted with tradition, folklore, and history. For each of us that has ever struggled to stir at a buzzing alarm clock at 4 in the morning, stubbed their toe in the dark, and endured sub-freezing temperatures for hours on end, only to return to the truck empty-handed, well, there was still something that drew us back again to the experience, hungry for more. That hunger is different for each of us, because what drew us to deer hunting in the first place is a very personal thing. When it comes to recreation and our spare time, first impressions are everything. We're not about to waste our precious free time on something we don't like. So, today we indulge in remembering those tangible, but mostly intangible things that defined our first experiences and helped to shape our passion for the great sport of deer hunting. Hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead. You know, if you're like me, that first deer hunt sticks in your mind and probably will forever. I can remember getting with my dad early in the morning, ready for the hunt, loading the pickup up, headed out to our hunting lease, him leading me in the dark. I remember every detail like it was just yesterday, and I hope I never forget it. And I want to introduce you today to my hunting partner for life. This is my dad, Max Craighead. Welcome, Dad.
Good to be here, Todd.
You know, this is very special for me because today's show is all about deer hunting, and there's probably nothing that I hold closer to my heart than the sport of deer hunting. And I'm sure you probably remember that first hunt you took me on too, huh?
Oh yeah, I have so many memories, and most of them are good, and a lot of them revolve around deer hunting, and especially when we were together.
Yeah.
And those trips out to the lease were some of the highlights of our life we spent together.
That's right. You know, do you remember where we hunted that very first time?
You've got me there. You'll have to tell.
Well, I remember.
I'm sure you do.
It was in that southeast corner of the lease, okay. And it was an old barn that the walls had fallen out of, and it was just nothing but the roof.
That's right.
And we had spotted it before season, and we made, I guess, a little bench inside there with some old 2x4s, and we were shooting through a hole in the shingles, right?
We knocked some of the shingles off and created a little hole, and we could peek out through that hole.
Yeah.
He had a good view of the whole area, and the deer couldn't see us, we thought.
That's right. That's right. Well, I doubt they did because we didn't see any that whole day.
And it was warmer in there too.
That's right. That's right. Well, as I said, first impressions are everything, and I'll never forget that hunt. And even though we didn't see a deer, it definitely set the tone for really the rest of my life. Today we're going to be talking with several noted deer hunters throughout the state, and talking about their passion for the sport, discovering what really got them hooked on deer hunting as well. So why don't we catch up with some of their stories?
All right, great. Thank you.
Well, we've been hunting together since I was probably, what?
Well, watch it, don't tell your age.
Oh, yeah. For a while, long time, years and years and years. That's not too many.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have great stories. One of the best stories is the area.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was just a couple of years ago. I went to my stand and he went to his stand. We were bow hunting, and we always take two-way radios, just in case, you never know, something can happen sometimes. And I didn't test mine before I sat down and got all ready, and I had the two-way radio behind me in my stand. And the evening started, get later and later, and I had all the deer come in my stand. I had deer, everywhere out in front of me. And I was basically, you're shaking just like crazy, and I love that part. And I was kind of picking which one I wanted to take. And then he radios in on my radio and then says, "Robin, I got the big one." And this was turned up very loud, and these deer were not bit, what, how far do you think?
20 yards maybe.
Yeah, 20 yards in front of me, and I'm just going, oh my gosh, they're going to hear this and they're going to be gone, and I'm going to be so upset. And so I didn't move. They either heard it and didn't care, or didn't really hear it, maybe because of the wind, whatever. And so I'm just sitting there still concentrating. I'm pulled back with my bow, and he radios again. "Robin, are you there? I got the big one." I'm just going, oh my gosh, don't do that. And so still they didn't spook them, and I took my shot. I got my deer. Then I radioed to him and I said, "I didn't answer your radio call. Hello, don't you understand that means there's probably deer in front of me?" And he was like, "Oh, I was so excited because I got the big one." And then of course I got a deer too, so we went and got mine. Then we went and got his. It was a very good. Called Mom afterwards, "Did you guys get one?" "Well, yeah, we got two. We each got one, and she's all excited, and it was cool.
Yeah.
That was a good
two
one.
Two nice bucks.
Yeah.
I mean, very nice bucks.
Yeah.
In fact, the largest buck I'd ever shot with the bow, which made it nice. And then
Actually, that was my
actually her
first.
first buck with the bow.
Yeah, and for both of us to get one with our
That same
bows, that
evening,
was a successful hunt. That was neat.
I know the biggest deer I've ever been close to that was alive. I was up in my tree stand, and I had my bow, and I had this little yardage thing, a digital yardage meter that wasn't working, and it was 11:30 in the morning, and I'd been sitting there all morning, and I thought, nothing's coming by. So I start working on that, and I pull the battery out, and I start taking it all apart. And as I look down, and I've got my bow taken apart in my hands, right beneath me on the trail I was sitting over is probably a 9 or 10 point buck. And I just froze, and I'm just looking down, and he just walked right on by because there was nothing I could do.
One of my biggest memories hunting deer. A good friend of mine, Dr. Sean Kelly from the Oklahoma City area, invited me to go to Osage on one of his leases, and he always tells me preparation's everything, for as long as I can ever remember. And one day, the day before the hunting season, it's about 50 degrees. So I trot up there the night before, and all of a sudden the weather drops down to about the teens, and all of a sudden I'm not prepared. And I'll never forget this day. I've never been so cold in my life. I would do anything at that time out there in those woods, and I was by myself. I got dropped off. They're not coming back for 3 hours. It's a bad feeling when you know for 3 hours you got to sit here and be cold. And from that day on, I've always been prepared when I've gone deer hunting. Whether it be what type of weather comes at us, I'm going to be prepared.
I can remember going out. We would set up deer camp. We had a trailer and we would set it up and go out there on the Friday before season opened on Saturday. It's funny how everybody in camp always takes on their own role, and mine was to clean everything. I had to keep everything cleaned up, and then there was one that was the cook and so forth. But we'd go out and have a big meal. You know, we'd plan this ahead of time and have a big meal on the night before and talk about which stands we're going to hunt the next day, and the excitement level's high, and it's like Christmas. You know, when you're a kid, and even when you're 50 years old, it's like Christmas every year, and or it's the same feeling as Christmas when you're a kid. It's hard to imagine. My wife says she's jealous that I have something that's just that I get that excited about, and it just keeps coming around year after year. And it's a hobby that's just like no other.
Well, the first time I went deer hunting, I had never been out in the woods by myself in the dark. And I remember going to my uncle's house, and he put me to bed on his couch, but I couldn't sleep all night long. I was so excited about getting to go the next morning, and I didn't have a rifle yet. I had an old shotgun that I was using slugs. So he took me out the next morning and set me down in the middle of a little clump of oak trees, and I remember just getting to hear all the sounds as the woods woke up that morning, and hearing the squirrels bark and hearing quail come near me and shuffling in the leaves. And the first deer I saw, I remember just being so surprised because I was sitting there freezing to death just trying to stay warm, and I just turned my head and looked around, and there was one standing about 20 feet from me. And of course it was looking right at me and had seen me move, but it was really exciting to see a deer up close.
Oh, I think it's just that you enjoy being in camp and you enjoy being out in nature. And it's always a challenge. I thought, since I started late in life, that this wasn't a very hard thing to do since I got one the first year. And I thought that, you know, we learned all we need to learn. But I think the most important thing we learned in camp or in out hunting on a deer stand, there's so much that we learned. We found out we hardly knew anything about wildlife. And we continue to learn, and that's important. And I can name all the birds that we see and hear when I get up every morning. And to see the morning begin and the daylight break, that's a special feeling. You just feel closer to God.
Not always do you see animals, and not always do you bring home animals. It's the experience, it's being out there, it's being able to see the country and the different places that you can go when you're hunting, and being able to experience those things with your family. And that's what makes hunting so much fun and worth sharing with your family and worth sharing with your kids.
I think it's more challenging to get up early and to get out and see all of nature wake up, and you're out in God's creation, and it's just it's an uplifting kind of thing, even if you don't get game. And we enjoy being in camp and having a big breakfast after we've been out hunting all morning, and an evening meal, and sharing our time together. My oldest son hunts with me, and we spend more quality time together that way than any other way that we would.
I think for me, deer hunting has become much more enjoyable to me because it's something that my dad and I have an opportunity to do. You know, my dad probably didn't start deer hunting until he was 60 years old, and he's really it's became a real passion for him now, and that makes it even more exciting for me to have the opportunity to get up early in the morning, have our coffee, do some things together. And I think that's why I deer hunt more than actually going out and taking a deer.
Hunting is so very peaceful, and you go out there and you can experience every little bug that walks by, or every little spider, or if a turkey or a possum or a deer or anything that you come in contact with, you get to see that animal in its own space.
Because when you first start hunting deer, a lot of it is about taking an animal or harvesting an animal. But the longer you do it, the more you realize that that was really just a secondary benefit of being out there. And then the real enjoyment and the real memories are made other places. I'm not minimizing how exciting it is to take that big buck, but there's so much more to the experience than that. That's just one segment of it.
You've got the birds that come in and land right next to you, and it's neat to look at them that close. You know, you've got the squirrels, you've got the raccoons, the armadillo, you know, all of that. That is so cool, and there's so many people in this world to think that they don't experience something like that. It's just amazing. But of course, in the obvious, you know there's a big one out there. You know he's in the area. Is he going to come by you? You know, are you going to see it? I mean, and of course, just
the way your heart jumps when you hear that.
Yeah, I just
hear that leaf or that branch crunch.
Yeah, and it's probably usually it's a squirrel, you know, and you're just like, God, it's behind me, it's right behind me, and you're waiting, and then you see like a squirrel or armadillo or something, you're just, oh gosh, you know. But just to get that your heartbeat going and just the race, I mean, this is great. It's just the best feeling.
You know, I think everybody has to be themselves, and there are obviously people that are just that are not against hunting, but that is not something that they pursue. And you know, as long as they keep an open mind, they may have a child that wants to do that, and a neighbor that or a close relative or someone that would like to take them. And yeah, I think it's just so important to introduce them to the outdoors in the right way, in a safe way, and to develop the respect that's needed there for how you treat the land and the game that you're after.
One of my greatest joys as an adult has been to take my children deer hunting, and I've actually got to start some friends that had never hunted, and produce some other deer hunters and children that didn't have a parent that hunted, and their parents have said, would you mind taking my son out? And so it's been a lot of fun and a real rewarding experience for me to watch somebody get started.
I know when deer camp is this year, and I got it marked in my calendar, and I'm marking off the days, just can't wait. And I think one of the biggest reasons why I enjoy it so much is the fact that it's also time that you're going to spend with friends, and time that you're going to get to spend with family. When sometimes you don't have that time in a demanding job and a very competitive job. That time doesn't exist very often. So I think that's something that I really look forward to and really enjoy, and I think it brings out even more enjoyment for hunting, is because you don't have that many days to be able to get out and do it, and they become much more valuable. And the people you surround yourself with during those days become even closer friends or even closer family.
I'll always remember that first season that I hunted with black powder and was fortunate enough to be able to harvest a 12-point buck. And I gave that to my grandson because he wanted to mount it, but he gave it back to him and told me to keep it as long as I was here on earth, and then he'd have it later on. But it was a beautiful mount, and a student at OSU in wildlife conservation mounted it for me.
There is no other place that you can get closer to God's creations, and it is just all around you out there, and you can't ignore it. And it is a place where you can go, and it's very peaceful, and you can be very appreciative of what's out there.
You know, I heard somebody say one time that they don't attend church, but when they're out hunting, you know, on that Sunday morning when everybody's at church, they feel just as close to God as if they were, you know, in church praying with everybody else, because they're out there with everything that He created. You know, it's just really nice.
I think I will always remember the sunrises on opening morning of deer season. It's just a whole new season has opened up, and all the good things are ahead.
I'll always remember going out with my uncles deer hunting, and how lucky I felt that I had uncles that deer hunted that would take me. And one of the most exciting moments was when I used to hunt with an old pump 12 gauge, and one of my uncles had a 30-06 he let me take, and I was so excited to get to hunt with a real deer rifle. So one of my greatest memories as a kid is wanting a deer rifle so bad, and I didn't think my parents would ever be able to afford one. And when I was 16, they bought me a bolt-action 270, and it was such a surprise on Christmas because I'd asked for an old 30-30 because I knew they could get one of those cheap. So it was a great thrill.
Well, one thing I'll always remember is you get out there and you have frost on your boots, and you always wait for the sun to come up just so you can get them, just try to melt the frost and get your toes warmed up a little bit.
I'll always remember being out with about 6 or 7 guys for about 8 or 9 days, and just the camaraderie of coming back to camp. It was so much fun.
I always remember you washing your socks in the bucket outside.
In the oil pan. I'll always remember that too. Colton, I remember us being out here one of your first times, and you climbed a tree stand, and I climbed one, and we were about 30 yards apart, and a doe and her baby was walking right beside her. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. It was really cool because we just sat as still as we could, and they just walked on by. And it's really cool to see, like, if she would hear a noise, like if we moved and she heard a noise and he'd just freeze, and the baby would freeze, and she would just kind of watch out for that. That was really cool how protective they are.
And then after they got on by, you started yelling at me because I didn't take one.
Yeah.
And you were so mad. You said, if I was gonna hunt like that, you're not coming anymore with all that work you put into it.
Yeah.
You remember that?
It was like you sit there for like 10 hours, and then you see
one walks by, and you didn't understand why in the world would I let one walk on by.
You know.
If you feel like maybe you're a little bit reluctant to harvest the deer, take a camera. Take a good camera with the telephoto lens. Take a picture. You know, I mean that's as good as harvesting one. You know, some people don't care for deer meat, and
Right.
we've got
But
there are
there's
programs
times.
out there where you can donate the meat. But just take a camera. Experience what people are talking about when they say, you know, seeing Mother Nature come alive.
Right.
You can't help but remember stopping out in the middle of the CRP field and just looking around at the stars and the vastness, and you kind of get a real idea of just, you know, how insignificant you are in this whole universe at times. And remember thinking and just saying a little prayer out loud that, you know, God, I appreciate the opportunity just to chase this animal. And you know, whether you take him or not is almost irrelevant. It's not irrelevant, but in some ways it's secondary to just the experience of being out there.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's show, listening to all the stories, and maybe it's got you to thinking about what makes deer hunting special for you. Dad, what will you probably always remember?
Oh, I'll remember from my first deer hunt, sitting around the campfire at night, listening to all the fascinating stories from my dad and my uncles about the day's experiences.
You know, what I'll always remember is just actually a feeling more than anything, and it was the feeling that you made me feel so special because you just took the time for me. And you know, and there's nothing that says that you love a child more than just spending quality time with them one-on-one. And I hope that you'll take that opportunity this year, especially with our new antlerless deer gun season just for youth and the extended deer gun season. I hope that you'll make this a year you'll always remember. Join us somewhere new next time on Outdoor Oklahoma.
And I can remember my dad said, well, if you're gonna deer hunt, you gotta wear something bright colors because you don't want to get shot. So I show up over there in a bright red coverall, like Halliburton red coverall. And here I am bow hunting, and only one in camp, you know, that had red coveralls on. But I killed a deer that year. I harvested a little doe that year, and it was the first deer that I'd ever taken, and I was so happy. And
That's cool.
yeah, that was pretty neat.
In red overalls.
In red overalls, so it didn't really matter, you know.
I'll always remember when I woke up to the sunset and then seeing the deer under me, that was pretty cool, because you see one really cool thing and then you look down, there's a deer right under you. That's really cool.
I'll always remember all the receipts I've collected from Walmart for going deer hunting.
I always remember waking Dustin up at 3:30 in the morning. It seems like every time when we're leaving, and he'll have such a strange look on his face. And then once you tell him, Dustin, it's time to get ready to go hunt. Well, I mean, he's out of bed and he's ready to go.
I always remember sleeping on the way to the range to go deer hunting.